It's been years since I played a Diablo title, and with Diablo 4's open beta right around the corner, I wanted to know, is this worth checking out? My name is Codiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and the short answer is yes. So here's the deal, I used to love Diablo. In fact, I think I still have a hard copy of Diablo 2 somewhere in my parents' basement. I've been keeping one eye on Diablo 4's development over the past year plus, and with the open beta and subsequent launch now in sight, I think it's time to pull the trigger and jump into the fray. The goal here is simple, bring you up to speed on key features, talk about classes, loot, and progression, and ultimately help you determine if the game is worth checking out yourself. Now that we're on the same page, let's dive in. Diablo 4 will feature 5 classes at launch: the Barbarian, Rogue, Sorcerer, Necromancer, and Druid. If, like me, you were a fan of Diablo 2, you might recognize this lineup as it's almost identical to what players got to experience in that game. First is the Barbarian, a frontline melee warrior. If you've played any previous Diablo game, then the moveset will look familiar with a variety of powerful melee-based abilities that lean heavy into bleed damage. The Barbarian has a unique class mechanic called the Arsenal System, which allows the player to equip 4 weapons at once. During combat, the Barbarian can switch to any of those weapons, even triggering abilities that require a specific type of weapon, which the character will automatically switch to. One of the classes that's still shrouded in a bit of mystery is the Rogue. As you might expect, this is a class that emphasizes subterfuge and agility to deal damage to enemies. There is a healthy mix of both melee and ranged attacks on the table, and this is one of those classes that could flex either way, depending on your playstyle. Little is known about the class's unique mechanic, class specialization, which allows the player to activate one of 3 specs, empowering your character in a unique way. The third class, the Sorcerer, is a magic-wielding class that channels the power of the elements, namely fire, frost, and lightning, to deadly effect. They have a really interesting, unique mechanic where they can enchant up to 2 of their active abilities. By enchanting an ability, you lose access to it as an active, but gain a passive effect, unique based on what you slot as the enchantment. Much like the Barbarian, this is a class the Diablo team has been refining for decades, so I'm looking forward to this incarnation in Diablo 4. Making its triumphant return is the Druid, the class I'm most excited to check out. Channeling the power of physical, poison, and lightning damage, the Druid is a hybrid class that can be built in a number of different ways, filling the role of a frontline tank or ranged caster. Unfortunately, its unique class mechanic has not been revealed quite yet, but based on the footage we've seen, the Druid looks like one of the most interesting classes, familiar, but still incredibly fresh. Finally, one of the most beloved classes in all of Diablo, the Necromancer, is back, and not as a DLC class. Tapping into bone, darkness, blood, and the army, the class is incredibly flexible. There are options for both melee and ranged playstyles, but most importantly is the unique class mechanic, Book of the Dead, which allows players to customize their undead summons, changing their archetype to fit the playstyle of the player, or sacrificing them altogether, transferring that power to the player instead. As I said in the intro, Diablo 2 was a huge part of my childhood, so to see classes like the Druid make their return is really exciting. Based on everything we've seen of the game, the combat looks visceral, and the team is definitely tapping into something much darker than it did in Diablo 3, which I think will appeal to a huge chunk of players like myself that have fond memories of the game's past. The Diablo 4 classes have definitely caught my eye, but as I learned more about the game, I was floored at how many seemingly small but impactful changes the team was making to the overall Diablo formula. First is the world, Sanctuary. For the first time ever, Diablo will feature an open world, a massive change that seemingly takes the experience completely off the rails. For the first time ever, players will be able to move between the various zones with no loading screens. It might sound ridiculous, but this has always been one of my biggest gripes with the game, and has prevented Diablo from feeling like a truly immersive experience I think we all recognize that it could be. There are 5 major zones the team has revealed ahead of launch: Skull's Glen, the Dry Steppes, Fractured Peaks, Kyrgyzstan, and Hawazar. As you might expect, each will have its own affect or vibe, if you will, and will be host to a unique family of monsters, including some new additions like the Drowned, men somewhere between life and death, risen up by the sea. During one of the developer live streams, the team even said that they're really looking at enemy families from top to bottom, and how everyone from the smallest minion to the largest brute has a moveset that fit together to outfit the entire family. When fighting together, there's a synergy that players will have to account and adjust for. It's the difference between throwing a bunch of cool enemies with cool moves at players, versus a really thoughtful approach to how enemies should be presented as a whole throughout the game. Another new addition to the game are world bosses, and at this point, it's pretty clear Diablo 4 just keeps taking steps towards MMO territory because, as you might expect, this is a group activity that requires a dozen plus people to complete. We've only seen these in action during brief moments throughout the trailers, but this is something the game has sorely needed: overworld content that feels organic and larger than life. I have to imagine these fights will also be the source for some pretty incredible loot. As you're exploring the overworld, you might also stumble upon a stronghold, which are areas in the game world overrun with enemies. Once a player clears out that stronghold, it'll purify that small part of the world and can even transform into a new player-friendly town. Clearing a stronghold can also expose new dungeons for players to explore, and with almost 150 confirmed in the game, it seems like strongholds are going to be key to our exploration. On top of that, each of the 5 zones I mentioned before will feature a Renown system. Think of this like area reputation. Pretty much everything you do in that zone will allow you to gain Renown, and as you unlock each level, you'll gain rewards, some of which are account-wide. This is your key to unlocking additional skill points, health potion charges, and other rewards that will make a substantial impact on your progression. Overall, these changes have me really excited about the world of Sanctuary. Throw in the fact that for the first time, mounts will be in the game, and each class will have a specific dismount attack combination. Like I said before, lots of small changes that I think are going to play out in a big way. There are a couple other things about Diablo 4 that definitely got my attention, and it largely comes back to character progression. As someone that grew up in the golden age of RPGs and MMORPGs, if there's one thing I really like, it's a good progression system, and Diablo 4 is doing some pretty cool things to make that power fantasy come to life. First is the Codex of Power, and while it's got a terribly corny name, its impact on the game can't be understated. So the Codex is a collection of all legendary aspects that you've unlocked in the game. These are special legendary powers that are unlocked by completing specific dungeons for the first time. These powers can then be imprinted on another rare or legendary item at a special vendor called the Occultist. There are some rules to the system, which we can talk about in another video. I mainly just wanted to bring you up to speed about this system because I think it's brilliant. Some examples of power aspects are Ghostwalker aspect, which allows you to move freely through enemies when you're below 40% health, or Aspect of the Protector, which grants players a barrier every 10 seconds, absorbing some sort of damage. There are dozens of these in the game, and since they're tied to specific dungeons, it acts as something players will work to hunt down based on their specific class and playstyle. And since the system is account-wide, it makes the entire process of finding these that much more satisfying because you know it'll have far-reaching implication as you consider leveling up alternate characters. Truth be told, this is one of those systems I'm most looking forward to, and one of the more interesting aspects of loot enhancement in the game. We all know Diablo 4 is a dungeon crawler with gear at the center of it, and while the core of that system hasn't changed in a dramatic way, a sort of auxiliary system like this that enhances loot is huge. And speaking of enhancements, you can't forget about the skill tree and Paragon System, two things that I believe will be at the center of Diablo's success or failure as a game. Both should feel familiar to players that are well-versed in ARPGs, but still feel uniquely Diablo-y. The skill trees are rather expansive, tapping into a sort of sprawling hub-and-spoke model. Major skills are denoted by these bigger squares, and off of those are passive upgrades to those skills. As far as we know, you won't be able to unlock everything, which is great by my standards, so you'll have to be really strategic about how you build out your character. The skill trees have actually seen some variations and iterations since the game has been revealed, so I wouldn't assume this is locked in stone quite yet. Once you hit level 50, you'll have access to the Paragon System. Every 1/4 of a level, you'll gain a Paragon point that you can place on the board. The board is filled with different tiles. Normal tiles will give you passive stat bonuses. Magic tiles provide slightly better, more diversified bonuses. Rare tiles are really transformative, influencing your build in a substantial way, and then there are legendary tiles. There is only one legendary per board, but offer the best bonuses. Building out your boards, and yes, that is plural, is going to take some serious dedication and planning because when you reach a gate tile on the edge of the board, you can opt to expand to another board, giving you access to a new set of tiles, including one legendary tile. There are even glyphs that you can socket into special slots on the board that enhance all of the nodes in the radius, while still providing a unique benefit of its own. I mean, talk about theory crafting for a second. This is some deep progression that's all really designed with player authority in mind. You may not know how to or even really care to min-max, but you sure are going to have a million ways to build out a character the way that you want. And as someone that misses that level of freedom and depth in their games, this is something I'm really excited to check out. If we're looking at the game just based on the systems they've revealed, then it's clear, at least to me, that Diablo 4 is clearly trending in a direction that will speak to longtime fans of the series. There's no doubt the team is embracing ideas from Diablo 2, but there are also clear influences from MMOs. Is the game going to be great? Well, we just don't know yet, but on paper, things are looking fantastic. This is just our first foray into Diablo 4. We know you guys come to check out the channel for all sorts of games, but if Diablo 4 is on your radar and you want more content like this, including deeper guides and eventually some fun builds, hit that like button and consider subscribing. We also plan on opening up a Diablo 4 clan once the game goes live on June 6th, so if that's something you're interested in, consider joining the Legacy Gaming community on Discord. We recently reworked our entire server, so come hang out, win free prizes, talk about games like Diablo 4, and eventually group up with your fellow clanmates. Check out the link below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.